Welcome to the Bob Priest Show of Life podcast. I'm your host, Bob Priest. Thanks for tuning in today's show. This podcast is dedicated to individuals and professionals who desire to learn more about the subject of health and wellness, as well as alternative technologies to better health and vitality. Let's get started. Good morning and welcome to the Bob Priest Show of Life podcast. I'm your host, Bob Priest. Thanks for tuning in to today's show. Today, my guest is Kim Wycamp. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, tell us a little bit about Kim.
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, I am a professional storyteller. I am a business consultant and a life coach, and it all revolves around, actually, the whole foundation of all of that is story.
That's interesting. I'm going to read a little bit of her bio just to let you know that she's more than just that little blurb she gave us. Each year, Kim presents to tens of thousands of people. Even in these unusual times, Kim continues to work virtually and in person with top companies and nationally recognized organizations. She has keynoted for some of Forbes' most admired companies, and has teamed up with and gone into the trenches with international companies and organizations, training teams and doing long-term consulting projects. 23 years of working in the field of communication and story has resulted in Kim being ranked as one of the top storytellers in the country. She carries an armload of awards in leadership and communication, as well as 8 Storytelling World Awards. That's awesome. Her greatest achievement is always being asked back. Her list of repeated clients is highly impressive, and one you'll experience a presentation. You'll understand why. And this is a quote from one of her companies that she worked with. It says, "Kim's approach enlightens you on the power of your own story to broaden the impact of what it is you really do." So Kim, tell us how you got started in the storytelling world.
Well, I've always used stories. By the way, real quick, Bob, is this video going to be seen by anyone?
No, this is just for me.
Wonderful, because while you were reading my bio, I was fixing my hair, so I just
Yes, I'm gonna do a vlog now that I know
and then it
that.
hit me. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if this is also audio? Okay, great, super. So everything's cool. But so after working with youth, and actually I mainly did youth and women work for 20 years. And I used a lot of applied storytelling in that work. I did not know that's what I was doing, but I did it. I told stories and used stories of from my own life, from my staff's life, from literature, from the Bible, from all over. I used stories and applied them and used them to almost sow a seed without preaching. There's a difference. And
Yeah.
so I did that. And then when I left that realm, I took time. I took about a 2.5 year period to figure out what I really wanted to do. And I realized that stories and storytelling, and I don't mean in a juvenile way. I'm not talking about the lady in the chair at the library or, a kindergarten teacher. I mean story as a powerful, applicable tool for all humans of any age to use and to be used was what I wanted to do, because there was an experience in my life that I'm not going to get into today. I don't think we have time. Where I was given, actually twice in my life, where I was given a story that radically changed my life. And I thought, if my life can change, the first one was from my father. It was probably a 2-minute story, radically changed our relationship and how I approached him. The other one was a story from a cousin about my birth mother, who I've never met, that radically changed my relationship to her as far as forgiving her and understanding her. And at that point, she was already passed away. So I thought stories are so powerful. I
Wow.
want to walk in that realm. And so I entered through the realm of entertainment. And after I made the decision to do that, in 2 years, I was on the national stage. And then I thought I have a lot more to say about the power of this. So I was already doing a lot of business consulting. So, and a lot of it dealt with story, whether it was using story in sales, using story in leadership, how to help CEOs do a better speech, whether it was I worked with Purina as they were trying to brand a new dog food branch within their company. I worked with them for almost 3 years and helped them identify the story, the arc of the story, how that translated to packaging, how that translated to social media. And so it just kind of ran parallel. And when I work with these people, inevitably when I'm consulting, personal things come in. Because when I'm business consulting, a lot of issues come from one or a group of people that have some rooted issues. And it's not always within the team or the company, it's within themselves. Thus, why I'm now a life coach. It all blends beautifully.
That's really interesting how that whole circle of 20 plus years of your life have come to this pinnacle of you having a business, having a voice out there in the world of storytelling. What are some of the top challenges women face when it comes to having confidence in speaking and being in front of some of these top Forbes companies and so on?
That's an interesting question. Um, I think I'm going to break this into a two-part answer. I think that let's get away from the gender of women and just say story. Somebody who's a professional storyteller right out of the bat has an issue because when people hear the word story or storytelling, men in general, sometimes women are more open to the concept, right? But men think, oh, it's emotional, or that is a juvenile thing, or that's not leadership, when they are unbelievably wrong. And I've had that kickback from men and women, you know. I was brought in by Enterprise to do a huge regional training and speech. And their new leader did not believe in what I did. He made that very clear, but I was hired by somebody else because I'd worked with them over a period of, my gosh, 8 years, repeated back, repeated back. And he came and he sat in the back. And they were getting bad news that day. And I knew that because I always, when I go into speak or train, I ask, is there going to be good news or bad news given today? What is this? This conference is for something, but are they coming in a good attitude or not? Well, they were coming in not a great attitude because their fleets had been, uh, the numbers were taken down. Less cars to rent meant less money, right?
Right.
And just trying to scramble for vehicles. And so what I did was I went from table to table and gave them exercises to do, and they did it. And then I had somebody at each table represent the table, get up and speak after I gave a story and explained some things to them I'm not going to get into here. And I mean, there were people standing up crying about how much they love their job, why they do their job, how they feel connected to their job. And when I was done, he's like, if you ever write a book, I will buy a couple thousand of them. Like, I can't believe what just happened. But it wasn't me, it was story. Granted, I'm really good at what I do. And I say that very confidently because I also at this age know what I'm not good at. And I confidently say that when I need to as well. But I'm good at what I do. And so the thing that I come up against is leaders, especially who think story is not something that can really change the culture and the narrative of their business. As far as a woman getting up, I don't have any problem with that. I really don't. It's a different world out there now. There's still issues, and I do hit those. Sometimes somebody will say something where I'm like, wow, there's like a woman standing here. But I don't take it personally, you know.
Well, that's good. I just was having a conversation the other day with someone about women being in the pulpit,
Mhm.
and there was conversation about traditions. And I grew up that you just never saw a woman in the pulpit except to give announcements about some kind of event that's
Potluck.
coming, potluck or whatever.
Yeah.
And anyway, this person was really being negative about women in the pulpit. And I said, where in the Bible does it say that women are not always? I mean, there's so many women in the Bible, powerful women that are, I wouldn't call it the pulpit, but they were in a role that has such a powerful effect over all of us. And I said, I've heard some very powerful women in the pulpit speak. By the way, you being one of them.
Thanks, Bob.
For the listeners, Kim and I go back 25 maybe years.
Almost, I'd say 25 easy. Yeah.
Yeah, easy 25, maybe closer to 30. So, and I sat under Kim's leadership when she was an associate pastor. She was a worship leader. She was the youth leader of my daughter's youth group, and the list can go on and on. She's really a phenomenal singer, by the way, and I'm assuming you still play your guitar. But I really think it's an important thing to mention that women play a huge role, whether it's in business, whether it's in spiritual matters, whether it's in counseling. Um, I'm glad that there's women out there. I'm very fond of women in all kinds
Wow,
of
that's a
ways.
relief that I
Yeah,
know
that's a
you're a
relief.
fan of us. And
Yes, aren't you glad? But I'm glad that things are changing, that it's not that traditional um, thought process, that there's been a paradigm shift. So
there is. You know what, Bob? I fly first class, and I don't say that for any reason to be like, ooh, it's built into my contract because I take so much stuff. Either they pay for it up front or they pay it on the back end. If they pay it up front, then all that stuff comes along with me for free, right? So
right.
it's not like a big, but over the years, I've noticed two things in first class. One, more women, and it's usually business. The bottom line is first class is majority of people on business trips. A lot more women, which was not the case when I started that 15 years ago. And the second thing is a much more casual dressed leader and a much more in tuned leader. It's not so much about how you present your power, it's more that you just walk in your power. And
Oh,
it's
that's a
a
good
lovely
statement.
thing, the conversations that I've had with, it's a beautiful trend that I see happening.
Hey, that's a good book. You need to write that down.
Okay.
Walking in your power.
Put it on
Um,
the list of 12 other books I'm writing. Uh, Not enough
so
time.
you've kind of hit on why you chose story as your medium of choice. Could you expand on that a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely. We are wired in our DNA to move in story. Every human is a storyteller, period. When you call your wife, if you have an experience and you call your wife and then you call your daughter, you're not going to tell it completely the same because you're a natural storyteller and you're going to bend it to suit the audience to get the response that you want. Ira Glass, who I love from This American Life, says that all story is manipulation. And manipulation is not bad if your purpose is pure. So if your purpose is to feed veterans, well, then when I spoke at the Vermont Food Bank Association conference, huge fundraiser, I had no problem using a story of my own life to emotionally manipulate or kind of push these people where I needed them so they gave hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Because my purpose was pure. And, when people manipulate oils to make a beautiful painting, there's no problem with that. When people
Mhm.
manipulate clay to make pottery, people get nervous about the word manipulation and confrontation, and they're actually beautiful words if done right. And so I love teaching people the power of story to change attitudes and narratives so that the ball swings on the other side, the direction that it needs to swing. But it is a powerful tool, and I'm going to say that probably 50 times because we have seen dictators and leaders use story to move groups of humans to do things that are atrocities. So it swings both ways. But I teach a whole concept that's copyrighted called Newton's Cradle, that I came up with, that talks about the effect of story on human psyche. And I utilize that in my work all the time. And it can be applied to husband and wife, mother and child, business, product to community, leader to staff, leader to team. It is a fascinating study on the impact of story upon a human. So that's one of the reasons why I love it and got involved with it, because I saw the good that can come from it. Also, and this is in the recent years of probably 6 to 7 years, and I really feel an urgency with this. I'm writing a book called Uprooted Youth, and I've put other things aside to work on that. But the generations coming up have actually been coined or labeled with a term called the lonely generation. The effect of loneliness on our younger generations is so profound that it is affecting their immune system. And research has shown that it's affecting their immune system as if they are a 3-pack a day smoker. Loneliness.
Goodness, my goodness.
So we have no dinner time to where stories can be shared, which it's been proven. This is not my pie in the sky, isn't this a cute little talk? This is research has proven that the happiest and most resilient families, thus children, and I mean children of all ages. If you got an 80-year-old parent, you're a child, right? The most resilient and happy families and children are those that are rooted in their stories. Because then when someone bullies you online, or the teacher treats you like crap, or you don't make it for a sport, or your friends want you to get high and go, drop a couple candy bars in your pocket, you have a strength to walk away because you're rooted in something bigger than you and that runs deep. That has been removed. Dinner time together has been removed. Absentee fathers, mothers working 2 jobs, fathers working 2 jobs, absentee mothers, children being raised by grandparents who are exhausted. There is no time at the table. There is anywhere from 2 to 11 hours of screen time a day on average with every youth. And we are, as humans, incredible creatures that are highly adaptable. But when we live in an artificial world, we become weak, we become sick, and we become exotic. And we are not meant to be that. And we have the highest medicated number of people in the upcoming generations. We have the highest levels of loneliness and anxiety. We have the highest levels of misunderstanding who they are, no direction. We have the lowest number of patents being applied for in the history of the United States. The creativity, the direction is not there. In my life coaching, youth are one of the demographics I'm really going to focus on, is helping them find direction. And so that is why I'm involved in this. I'm trying to literally, as we speak, working with neurologists and counselors to try and figure out how an uprooted child, whether they come from a home that costs 1.5 million or they've lived in 15 different apartments and gone to 9 different schools, they can still be uprooted, both of them, no roots. How we can have them self-root, and how we can change the narrative and literally change the neuro map in their mind to give them what they need to feel grounded. And that's what I'm working on right now. And that's why I love this.
Man, that's a huge project and an important one because being a former educator of 30 plus years, I still have a tremendous heart for kids, and what I see basically everything you said. I see, and I really have been challenged myself to how can I help, especially when it comes to the identity that our youth feel through social media or the lack thereof.
Mhm.
And then you said it right on, you spot on. It's an artificial world. And here we are now with artificial intelligence taking over. So,
Mhm.
um, wow, that's a story in itself right there. That's a big story. Share a couple of your greatest accomplishments with us.
Mm. Oh gosh, you know, would greatest accomplishments be anything without your greatest failures, right?
True.
I mean, one highlights the other. Um, Greatest accomplishments, my children. Both of them have had one more than the other, have hoed a tight, hard row. Um, and truthfully, some of it because of being in the church and seeing the ugly side, which that's there. You know, it's
Sure it
anything
is.
ran by humans has an ugly side. It has nothing to
Mhm.
do with the religion itself. You know, I think it was Gandhi said he would have been a follower of Christianity if it wouldn't have been for the people. But you know, so anything that has a human side, I'm not nixing the church, but you know, they saw that and ran as far as they could, which I understand. But they're doing great, and I
Good.
love them, and they're strong, powerful women that fight hard for what they believe in. So that's my greatest accomplishment by far, to the end of my life, to my last breath. And then I would have to say my work with youth for 20 years. I still hear from kids. They still email me. They call me. I've married some of them. I still have a card I can marry and bury. And and so they call me to do the service, and that means a lot, or call me to be there, or send me baby pictures and contact me. And there was a kid named Tommy that I mean, a real rough situation, because a lot of the kids I dealt with never ever ever entered the church. They came to my youth house. And this kid Tommy, his mom was literally a woman who would sell herself to be able to get crack. And her husband was dying in a room on a bed, um, from blood poisoning, and was on oxygen but smoking and drinking still. And the cops would call me because they knew I was directly connected to these kids. I did a lot in the community when I had those centers. And I got Tommy and his brother out of a lot of situations where they would be found beaten, um, naked outside, terrible situations.
Mm.
And I just fed into them and fed into them and fed into them and worked with them, gave them story after story after story to try and change the narrative in their mind, to change their concept and their worldview and their attitude. And I can honestly say this is one of my top things is sorry. I mean, like when I die, this is one of my top things because we, you know, so much invested in these kids. And you never invest to see the fruit. You hope to see the fruit. You do that with your own children. You do it with your spouse. You do it with your job. If you get to see the fruit, good for you. We're lucky. If you don't, you still do a bang up job, give everything you have, walk away and just pray and hope that the fruit comes later, right?
Right.
So we have to forward by like 12, 13 years since I saw these kids, these two kids. Tommy's brother, who I won't mention because his name is highly recognizable. Tommy, there's a million Tommies. Uh, but his brother just not good, bad situation, never repaired from any of that. But I get a Facebook message from this kid, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I recognize that name. I didn't even know we were friends on Facebook because, you know, you just got lost in the fray because there's so many of them. And I mean, everybody can friend you. The guy that waits on you at Hardee's is like, oh, dude, what's your name? Oh, I'm now your friend. You know what I mean? It's just really like, okay. And or you're at a conference and you get 100 new friends and you're like, They don't know me, but it's cool. So he was in there and he sent me a message and it was so simple. It said, "Hey, Pastor Kim," he said, "I'll never forget what you did for me. And if you ever need anything, let me know." And he said, "I have a baby girl and I have a new car." And that was it. And so I went to his Facebook page and looked, and he did have a new car. I mean, it was an old Cadillac, but it was a new car. And it was a beauty. It's a boat. It's freaking awesome. I'm happy for him. Loves his little girl. Pictures of him taking her fishing, pictures of him taking her to the playground. His girlfriend, long term girlfriend, mother of the child, had a picture of some body spray he bought her for Valentine's. And I'm like, what a win. If you understood the situation, huge freaking win. He's changing the narrative of a really bad root system. And that is probably my favorite accomplishment.
Wow, Kim, that's that's a powerful story.
Yeah.
Um,
I've got some awards and stuff like that, but I really don't care about that. I'm not kidding.
yeah, it
I
all
mean,
tarnishes somewhere along the way, doesn't it?
yeah, there's people that, yeah, no biggie. But that one life, that makes me very happy.
I remember vividly bringing Brooke over to the little youth place we had over on Flanagan
Yep.
and drop her off, and there'd be kids over there I'd never seen. I never saw them at church, but there, I mean, gosh, must have been 20, 30, 40 kids, and they're skateboards and they're just running around having a great time. And I remember coming inside the youth house and they'd be having something to drink and some food and snacks and just laughing and cutting up. And some of them just, you could tell they came from some pretty rough situations. And but I know my daughter loved coming over there. If if for some reason I couldn't get her there, she was not a happy camper.
Yeah,
And
and that was Wednesday nights.
that was
Friday
me.
nights,
Yeah,
Friday nights was another animal. We'd have up to 200 kids. And they'd
that's
come from Virginia Beach. I
that's
mean, they would
amazing.
drive hours, but I didn't allow my normal youth to come to that unless they had been trained because we got some serious stuff going on Friday nights.
Yeah, and I knew that, and I knew it was a different ministry that um, you were doing different things to try to reach that group of people. I commend you for those years. My daughter today still talks about your ministry and your time and your commitment and the heart that Kim Wycamp
Yeah.
has, not just had. Hey, as we wrap up today, what would you like our listeners to take away from today's episode?
If you have a parent who is still living, get over yourself. Get over yourself. Check your ego. Just give Eckhart Tolle a call and say, "Help me check my ego," and humble yourself and get in their presence and ask them questions. Tell them you forgive them, even if it upsets them and they don't understand why. And ask them when they rode in their first car, when they had their first date, why they did this, how they did this. Because when they die, and the only thing they have is a metal bed and a thin sheet and hospital blanket, and the only people really standing there, friends stand on the rim, but family, even if you don't like your parent or if you adore them, are the ones that are there for that last breath. And over the years, because I was a nursing home chaplain, over the years, and even through my work, I have heard time and time again, I wish I would have asked. Don't wait till they're dead to wish you heard the stories. That's the first thing I want them to take away. And I want to just add this, by moving past yourself and putting your ego aside does not mean that anything they've done is right. It just means you're rising above it to get what you need and also to hear them, give them an ear as they are rounding into the last part of their life, whether they have 10 years or 20 years, right? The second thing I want them to take away is if you have anybody younger than you, a child, nephew, niece, sister, brother, tell your stories. Tell your stories. Isn't that cute? You do not understand the power. Even if that 15-year-old or even 28-year-old rolls their eyes, tell it. Look at them. Just say, suck it up for a minute and let me just do this. Humor me. I want to tell you something. You know that your father's father, your grandfather, died in the field, and that your grandfather at sixth grade left school, ran a whole tobacco farm, and sent two sisters through college, cared for three others till they graduated, and cared for his mother. That blood runs in you. Share those stories, even if they roll their eyes, because they will become valuable at some point. And even if they're rolling their eyes, they identify. And even if you have to say your grandfather was a pure out drunk and died with a beer can laying by his head in the yard, it's still a lesson learned, right? That's why in fairy tales there's dragons, is to let little ones know bad stuff's coming, but it can be conquered one way or the other. It's what you do with your stories. So listen to those ahead and tell to those behind. That's what I want people to take away.
Man, that's powerful, Kim. I just lost my best friend of 55 plus years about a month ago. And his youngest daughter, we were sitting around a campfire the night before the memorial, and his youngest daughter came over to me and said, I want you to tell me stories about Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, I thought about what she was asking, and she wanted to know the bad stuff that he never would share. And my brain was going down that road. I'm going, there's just not a lot of things like that. He was just a good guy. And but I've tried to share some stories with her just to keep his memory alive in her mind, and also it helps me go through the grieving process of losing such a great friend. But Kim, I
Well,
have
I can just say something to that quick. You're doing more than keeping memories alive. You're rooting her in the history of who she is. You're rooting her that when she goes up against hurdles, she'll approach them differently because there's a different narrative. So kudos to you.
well, thank you. They're a special family. They mean a lot to me. You know, you're special family too. And I, I've missed your presence around our community here in Virginia and Christiansburg, and hope that we have the opportunity on your many travels through to tell a story or to do a business seminar or whatever. Um, but I thank you so much. I'm glad our listeners got to hear about you and maybe get in touch with you through my podcast. Could you tell our listeners the best way to reach Kim Weitkamp through email or website or whatever you would like them to know?
I sure can. They can go to profitablestory.com, and just as it sounds, profitablestory.com. They can see my whole bio, the breadth of my work, who I've dealt with, clients that trust me, for any consulting or speaking. I keynote all around the country. And they can shoot me an email. Actually, it'll go to Annie, but she'll pass it my way. If it's a direct question or if it's an inquiry, she'll handle that. But you can get through to me by the contact page there, or you can just email me at kimweitkamp@gmail.com. And that's KIMWEIT as in Tom, KAM as in Mary, P as in Paul @gmail.com. Dun-dun-bum-ba-dum.
But up then I'm crash. Kim, thank you so much for spending a little time with us today on our podcast. Folks, thank you for tuning in to the Bob Priest Show of Life. And I hope you enjoyed our interaction with Kim today. And if you'd like to reach her, she's left that information. And I will also include that in my program notes at the end of this. Kim, thank you so much. I hope you have a blessed day today. Thanks for the salute. And God bless you. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Bob. Keep up the good work.
Bye-bye.